What if I told you that your grandmother was richer than you, and she did it with dirt under her fingernails? Not richer in dollars, not richer in assets, but richer in something the financial system has spent 70 years teaching you to forget. She could feed herself. She could clothe herself. She could survive without permission. And somewhere between her generation and yours, that power was stolen. Not in a single dramatic heist, but slowly, deliberately, through a campaign so effective that you don't even know what you lost. This is the story of Victory Gardens. Not the sanitized version you learned in school, with smiling families planting tomatoes for the war effort. This is the other story, the one about what happened after the war ended, the one about how an entire nation was taught to replace self-reliance with dependence, and how that dependence became the most profitable product ever sold. Because here's the thing about Victory Gardens that nobody wants to talk about. During World War II, Americans grew 40% of all the vegetables consumed in the entire country. 40%. In backyards, on rooftops, in empty lots and public parks, 20 million families transformed themselves from consumers into producers. They didn't do this because they loved gardening. They did it because the government told them to, because the nation needed every scrap of commercial food production shipped overseas to feed the troops. So citizens stepped up. They planted. They harvested. They canned. They discovered something dangerous in the process. They discovered they didn't need the system as much as they thought. Then the war ended. And the question that haunted every boardroom in America was simple. How do you get 20 million independent producers to become dependent consumers again? How do you make them forget what their hands can do? The answer is what built the world you live in today. Let's go back. 1945. Victory in Europe. Victory in Japan. The boys are coming home. The factories that spent 4 years building tanks and bombers need something else to build. The propaganda machine that convinced housewives to grow cabbage needs a new message to sell. And the economic engine that roared to life during wartime needs fuel. It needs consumption. It needs you to buy things. Not make them. Not grow them. Buy them. But there's a problem. The American citizen in 1945 is not the same creature who existed in 1941. This citizen has been transformed by necessity. This citizen knows how to grow food, mend clothes, repair tools, make do with less. This citizen has tasted independence, even if it was served with ration cards and sacrifice. This citizen is dangerous to the new economy being planned in corporate offices and government committees. So a campaign begins. Not a conspiracy, exactly. More like a convergence of interests. Agricultural corporations need markets. Chemical companies need customers. Supermarket chains need traffic. Appliance manufacturers need kitchens to fill. And all of them need you to believe the same thing, that self-reliance is backward. That Victory Gardens were a wartime sacrifice, not a permanent solution. That modern life means liberation from the soil. The propaganda is subtle at first. Magazine advertisements show gleaming suburban kitchens, spotless and efficient, where food appears as if by magic from colorful packages. Television programs depict the modern housewife as sophisticated, her hands soft and clean, her meals assembled from cans and boxes rather than dirt and sweat. The implicit message is clear. Growing your own food is what poor people do, what primitive people do, what people did before they knew better. Meanwhile, the infrastructure of dependence is being built. The interstate highway system, sold to the public as a defense project, serves another purpose. It allows centralized food production to reach every corner of the nation. Supermarkets, a relatively new concept, begin to spread like a religion. They offer variety, convenience, and something more insidious. They offer the illusion of abundance while hiding the chains of dependence. because once your town's economy reorganizes itself around the supermarket, once the local farms disappear and the soil knowledge fades, you're locked in. You have no choice but to buy. The Victory Garden doesn't die overnight. Through the late 1940s and into the 1950s, many families keep growing food. Old habits die hard, but the cultural pressure builds. Suburbs are designed without space for gardens, only decorative lawns that must be maintained, but never harvested. Homeowner associations, a new invention, begin writing rules about what you can plant and where. Tomatoes in the front yard become a violation of community standards. Food production becomes aesthetically offensive. Beauty is redefined as sterility, as grass that does nothing but grow and get cut and grow again, an endless cycle of pointless labor that feeds no one. The economics of this shift are staggering. Think about what a Victory Garden represented in pure financial terms. When you grow food, you are removing yourself from a supply chain. You are not paying the farmer, the distributor, the trucker, the supermarket. You are not paying for packaging, advertising, branding. You are not generating profit for shareholders. You are creating value that exists outside the monetary system. You are, in the most literal sense, not participating in the economy. From the perspective of post-war capitalism, this is a problem. The entire system being constructed depends on participation, on spending, on the endless circulation of money through corporate channels. A person who grows their own food is like a leak in the system. A small leak, maybe, but multiply it by 20 million families and you have a crisis. You have 40% of the vegetable market that simply doesn't exist. 40% of potential profit that vanishes into backyard soil. So the solution is to plug the leak. Make it difficult to grow food. Make it unfashionable. Make it unnecessary. But most importantly, make people forget how to do it. Break the chain of knowledge that passes from grandmother to mother to daughter. Interrupt the transfer of skills. Let one generation age and die without teaching the next. Within 20 years, you can transform a nation of producers into a nation of consumers, and they won't even remember what they lost. The chemical industry plays a crucial role in this transformation. During the war, companies like DuPont and Monsanto manufactured explosives and chemical weapons. When peace arrives, they have factories, expertise, and a problem. What do you do with facilities designed to produce death when death is no longer needed in such quantities? The answer is brilliant in its simplicity. You rebrand the same chemicals as agricultural products. Ammonium nitrate, used in bombs, becomes fertilizer. Organophosphates, developed as nerve agents, become pesticides. The factories keep running, the profits keep flowing, and farming itself is transformed. This is where the narrative of the Victory Garden gets intentionally corrupted. The story you're told is that industrial agriculture made small gardens obsolete. That science and efficiency replaced the need for backyard food production. But that's not what happened. What happened is that food production was deliberately centralized and made dependent on inputs you had to buy. Seeds that won't reproduce, so you have to buy new ones every year. Soil depleted of nutrients, so you have to buy fertilizer. Pests resistant to natural methods, so you have to buy pesticides. The entire system is designed to ensure that growing food requires participating in the economy, purchasing products, generating revenue for corporations. The Victory Garden was dangerous because it operated outside this system. You could save seeds from this year's crop to plant next year. You could compost kitchen scraps to feed the soil. You could use companion planting and natural methods to control pests. None of this required purchasing anything. None of this generated profit. All of it represented knowledge and power that resided in the individual rather than the corporation. And here's where it gets darker. Because the destruction of the Victory Garden wasn't just about selling groceries. It was about something more fundamental. It was about restructuring the relationship between citizen and state, between individual and system. A person who can feed themselves is a person who can say no to bad jobs, to unfair wages, to unjust laws. Self-reliance is the foundation of all other freedoms. It's the bedrock upon which you build the ability to resist. And resistance is bad for business. Think about the architecture of control in modern life. You need a job to pay rent. You need rent because you don't own land. Even if you own land, you need money to pay property taxes. You need money to buy food because you don't grow it. You need money to pay utilities because you don't generate power. Every necessity of life has been transformed into a product you must purchase. Every product you must purchase requires you to participate in the economy on terms you didn't set. You are not a citizen. You are a consumer, and the difference matters. The Victory Garden represented the possibility of a different arrangement. Not complete self-sufficiency, which is a fantasy, but partial independence. Enough independence to have leverage. Enough independence to have choice. The system that replaced it offers neither. It offers convenience, variety, and the illusion of freedom while quietly removing the foundation upon which real freedom stands. Let me paint you a picture of what was lost. Imagine a family in 1944. The father is overseas, fighting in France. The mother works in a factory, building airplane parts. The children, because this is before modern notions of childhood, help however they can. In the backyard, taking up every inch of available space, is the Victory Garden. Tomatoes, beans, lettuce, carrots, squash, herbs. The mother tends it in the early morning before work and in the evening after her shift. The children water and weed. The grandmother, living with a family because this is before retirement communities and nursing homes, supervises and teaches. She knows which plants to put next to each other. She knows when to harvest. She knows how to can and preserve so food from summer lasts through winter. This family is not wealthy. By modern standards, they would be considered poor. But look at what they have. They have food they produce themselves. They have skills passed down through generations. They have the knowledge that they can survive hardship because they've done it before. They have agency. They have power. Not the kind of power that shows up on a balance sheet, but the kind that matters when everything else fails. Now, fast forward 30 years, 1974. The children from that family are adults now, living in suburbs, working in offices and shopping malls. They buy their food at supermarkets. They don't know how to grow anything. The grandmother is dead, and the knowledge she carried died with her. These adults are wealthier than their parents by every conventional measure. They have bigger houses, nicer cars, more possessions, but they are also more dependent, more fragile, more vulnerable to any disruption in the supply chain that feeds them. They don't think about this vulnerability because they've been taught not to. They've been taught that dependence is actually independence because they have money and choice. They can choose between 20 brands of tomato sauce at the supermarket. This is presented as freedom, but it's not freedom. It's the illusion of choice within a system of dependence. Real freedom would be the ability to make tomato sauce from tomatoes you grew yourself, or to choose not to eat tomato sauce at all, or to barter with a neighbor who grows tomatoes for something you produce. Real freedom is options outside the system, not just options within it. The economics of this become clear during any crisis. The 1973 oil embargo, the supply chain disruptions of 2020. Whenever the system hiccups, whenever the trucks stop running or the stores close, the vulnerability is exposed. People who cannot feed themselves panic. They fight over toilet paper and canned goods. They wait in long lines and pay inflated prices. They are entirely at the mercy of forces beyond their control. And this vulnerability is not an accident. It's a feature. It's the leverage that keeps the system running. Because here's the secret that nobody in power wants you to understand. The economy doesn't serve you. You serve it. Your role is not to be fulfilled or happy or secure. Your role is to consume, to work so you can earn money to spend on things you've been convinced you need. The system requires constant growth, which requires constant consumption, which requires you to always want more, always need more, always be slightly dissatisfied with what you have. This is not a flaw. This is the design. The Victory Garden was a glitch in this design, a brief moment when necessity forced a different arrangement, when citizens became producers and discovered they preferred it. Not the hard work, necessarily, but the independence, the security, the satisfaction of eating food you grew with your own hands. These feelings are dangerous because they threaten the foundation of consumer capitalism. They suggest that maybe more stuff doesn't equal more happiness. Maybe dependence on a paycheck in a supermarket doesn't equal freedom. Maybe the modern bargain, trading autonomy for convenience, isn't actually a good deal. So the Victory Garden had to die. Not just die, but be memory hold, turned into a quaint historical curiosity, a relic of a simpler time, something nobody would actually want to return to. The narrative had to be controlled, and it was. For 70 years, it was, until recently, because something is shifting. You can feel it. The cracks in the system are showing. The grocery bills keep climbing, the supply chains keep breaking, the jobs keep getting more precarious. The promises of prosperity keep feeling more hollow. And some people are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. They're starting to wonder if their grandparents might have known something worth remembering. They're starting to look at their lawns and see wasted space. They're starting to learn about seeds and soil and the satisfaction of harvesting food they grew themselves. This terrifies the system. Not because backyard gardens will collapse industrial agriculture. They won't. But because every person who opts out even partially is a person with more leverage, more choice, more independence. And independence is contagious. It spreads. It makes people think about what else they might not need to buy, what else they might be able to do themselves, what other forms of dependence they might be able to escape. The economics of self-reliance are simple but radical. Every dollar you don't spend is a dollar you don't need to earn. Every skill you learn is leverage in every future negotiation. Every reduction in dependence is an increase in freedom. Not freedom in the abstract, philosophical sense, but freedom in the immediate, practical sense. The freedom to walk away from a bad situation because you have options. The freedom to take risks because you have a safety net you built yourself. The freedom to say no because you're not desperate. This is what the Victory Garden really represented. Not just vegetables. Liberation. A different way of organizing your relationship with the economy. A way that puts you in control, rather than at the mercy of forces beyond your understanding. And this is why it had to be destroyed, why the propaganda had to be so thorough, why the skills had to be allowed to die, why the very concept had to be made to seem backward and impractical and vaguely embarrassing. But here's the thing about knowledge. It doesn't actually die. It goes dormant. It waits. And when conditions change, when the old arrangements stop working, when people get desperate or curious or angry enough, it comes back. The seeds, literal and metaphorical, are still there. The soil still works the same way it always has. The basic human capacity to grow food hasn't changed. What changed was permission, culture, the story we tell ourselves about what's normal and possible and desirable. So maybe the question isn't whether we can return to the economics of the Victory Garden. Maybe the question is whether we can afford not to. Whether the current arrangement, the one where every necessity is a product you must purchase, where independence has been traded for convenience, where your role is to consume and obey and never question why things are the way they are, whether that arrangement is actually serving you or just serving the people who profit from your dependence. Your grandmother knew the answer. She knew it in her hands, in the calluses and the dirt under her nails. She knew it in the jars of preserved food lining her shelves. She knew it in the certainty that whatever happened, she could feed herself and the people she loved. That knowledge made her dangerous, made her free, and that's why they took it from you. But you can take it back, not all at once, not by abandoning modern life and moving to a farm, but incrementally, one skill at a time, one plant at a time, one reduction in dependence at a time. Because every step towards self-reliance is a step away from the system that requires your submission, and submission, dressed up as convenience and sold as progress, is still submission. The victory garden was never really about victory in war. It was about victory over dependence, over helplessness, over the fear that you can't survive without permission from the system. That victory is still available. The only question is whether you're ready to claim it.